Hello and welcome to page 18 of Anatomy Coloring Book. This is Dr. Stephen Harkins. And in this lesson we will be learning about the formation of bone. How did bone form? Well, first bone started out as cartilage, as is seen right here. In our young infant or even before we were born even, bones started to form with cartilage. This is called the perichondrium, with cartilage first. So a soft cartilage, a very soft, pliable form of structure. Okay, so it hasn't not become hardened yet. And then what happens is these chondrocytes, or the cartilage forming cells, anyway, they're blasting cartilage throughout, creating this formation and creating this perichondrium, this layer on the outside of the bone, or what will become a bone. And then a layer starts to develop here, a collar, a hard bony collar starts to form around the sort of the waist of the bone here. And this occurs when blood vessels right here start bringing osteoblasts or bone forming cells to the waist or the middle portion. And at the same time, the cartilage begins to, in the center, begins to die off. It begins to die off. These cells begin to die off as this new bone collar is forming right around the middle. And when these cartilage cells that I'll highlight in red start to die off, they begin to calcify. Calcify means that the mineral calcium begins to come in and settle in that area and forming a sort of a hardened, so it does begin to calcify and harden throughout the middle, while certain places stay as 100% cartilage. And here you see this sort of calcified cartilage right here in this area here on both ends of the diaphysis. So it begins to calcify and sort of harden in there. So this is calcified chondrocytes, or calcified cartilage, you could say, while this collar remains and continues to grow. Recall these blood vessels that I had outlined over here that were bringing these osteoblasts to this blue area in the collar. Now they're starting to penetrate through the collar, and they're going to go and drop osteoblasts over here. And what's going to happen is, and here you see a diagram of it here, is these blood vessels coming through are putting osteoblasts down, creating new bone. So this calcified cartilage is now going to turn into bone. See, the calcified cartilage here begins to be replaced by new bone, endochondral bone. Here. So at the end of each diaphysis, endochondral bone right down here, E, is being laid down. The calcified cartilage is starting to be eaten up and disperse and move on its way. And note that the cartilage, A here, is here, hyaline cartilage. Okay, so a lot of cartilage still remains, but you see a process now of bone being laid down in two areas. Well, of course, this bone on the side here and that collar, that's still there, and that continues to grow. And then this new, as I said, this new endochondral bone. Endochondral. Endo meaning inside of the cartilage, or on this side of the cartilage. And periosteal bone. This bone here that was laid down on the sides is called periosteal bone because of course of the thin layer periosteum that lies right outside, and that's going to become very important. It's like saran wrap surrounding your bones. And remember, we're talking about development here. We're still in utero here. We're still a fetus, an infant. We're not even born yet until we get to, let's see, right here. You have this hardening of the collar and this endochondral bone being laid down. Now, a review of terms. Of course, you know that this area here in the middle is called the diaphysis, and this area is called the epiphysis. On the end of your bones is called the epiphysis, and the middle long shaft is called the diaphysis. Now, these areas of bone growth right in between the diaphysis and the epiphysis are called the primary ossification centers. Primary ossification. And what happens next after birth between 1 to 5 years of age is those blood vessels begin to not only infuse the primary centers, but they also now reach into what's called a secondary center of ossification in the epiphysis. Now we have blood coming in the epiphysis, and of course, what do we have? We have calcified cartilage, the cartilage of the epiphysis right up here, recall, which was just pure cartilage, now begins, there's still cartilage here on the outside, but from inside out, look what starts to happen is the calcium, it becomes calcified cartilage right here. A layer of calcified cartilage with underneath it now another layer of endochondral bone. See? So you got your hyaline cartilage on the outside. Let's see if I can give a new color to, I'll give brown to the calcified cartilage here. That's your layer of cartilage that began to calcify and harden with calcium. And then underneath it, you can see the endochondral bone forming. Why? Because the osteoblasts were sent in here to the center of the epiphysis to lay down osteoblasts through the blood vessels. So they laid down the endochondral bone in the middle. So here again is your calcified cartilage. Let's see, right here, this layer of calcified cartilage. Right here, with your layer of endochondral bone underneath it. Where did the endochondral bone come from? Well, the blood supply from these arteries came in, pushed through this collar, this periosteal bone here, and laid down osteoblasts. So you see the primary centers of ossification. Ossification means bone forming. It takes over from the calcification. Recall that originally it was calcified. It was just calcified chondrocytes up here. It was calcified cartilage cells. And those calcified cartilage cells begin to become replaced by actual real bone, laid down by bone-forming cells called osteoblasts. Now, note here at later development, between 5 years and 12 years old, this little center here. So let's start out. We have our hyaline cartilage here, right, up top. Look how the hyaline cartilage got squeezed all the way to the outside, right? Pushed all the way to the outside. It used to take up the whole entire epiphysis up here, you see. And it got pushed to the outside. Note the, let's see, the calcified cartilage underneath it, right here. So, okay, here's something I want to point out. It's the layer of hyaline cartilage that's left there, surrounded by a layer of calcified cartilage, and another layer of calcified cartilage. This section, this area here is known as the epiphyseal growth plate. Epiphyseal growth plate. This is where bones grow out through life and they lengthen. They lengthen along the process. So if you're wondering how your bones ever got longer and begin to expand, it all happens here at the epiphyseal growth plate, which is a layer of hyaline cartilage you can see here. And on each side of it, a layer of calcified cartilage. So here's your calcified cartilage, yeah. Here and here. And here is your remaining layer of hyaline cartilage. This is the growth plate where all of the growth in your bones occurs. And you can still see underneath it the blood supply being supplied here and laying down endochondral bone, real actual bone underneath and in here as well, from the inside out, pushing outward, 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 and longer, longer, longer. So the bone lengthens in this way at the epiphyseal plates. Epiphyseal plate is also known as the growth plate. And over time, as you grow older, as a child grows into an adult, these new osteoblasts begin to lay down their bone and absorb the calcified cartilage and lay the bone down until there is no epiphyseal plate left. And that's when your bones are fully grown. And you can see sort of a remnant of the epiphyseal plate here. They call this the epiphyseal line right here. And it's still visible. Could possibly, or it's like a dense line that's kind of left over. It's a vestige. It's what remained of the epiphyseal growth plate called the epiphyseal line. And this, of course, is a mature bone, a fully growing bone. So that's the epiphyseal line. We've talked about the epiphyseal or growth plate right here. Of course, the epiphysis is the ends of the bones. The diaphysis is the shaft. The diaphysis is this shaft area that contains the periosteal bone and the collar. And that concludes our lesson on page 18 of Anatomy Coloring Book. This is Dr. Stephen Harkins signing off.